Sometimes God does not speak through words. Sometimes He speaks through absence. One day you realize a person who once filled your life is no longer there. No fight, no warning, just distance. And your heart keeps asking the same quiet question. Why? At first, you try to understand it with logic. You replay conversations in your mind. You search for the exact moment where things changed. You wonder if a different tone, a different choice, or a different prayer could have kept them close. The heart does this when it feels loss. It looks backward, hoping to rewrite the story. But God often works in ways that do not explain themselves immediately. In Scripture, many removals happened quietly. People left, doors closed, paths separated. Not because someone was evil, but because staying would have slowly damaged the soul. God sees the full road. We only see the next few steps. There are relationships that feel good emotionally, but drain you spiritually. They make you anxious instead of peaceful. You pray more after seeing them, not because of joy, but because your heart feels unsettled. God notices that unrest long before you do. When God removes someone, it is often because their presence was blocking growth you could not yet see. Not every connection is meant to last forever. Some people are assigned to a season, not a lifetime. And when that season ends, holding on can quietly hurt you. This is the part many believers struggle with. We assume love always means keeping. But sometimes love means letting go, even when it hurts. God's love is protective. It guards your future, even when your present feels broken. If God allowed the distance, it is because staying would have cost you something precious: your peace, your faith, or the person you're becoming. After the separation, silence becomes your new companion. The phone stays quiet. The routines you shared disappear. And in that quiet, emotions grow louder. Doubt whispers that you were not enough. Memory highlights only the good moments and hides the reasons God allowed the ending. This is where faith is tested gently, not loudly. God does not rush to explain Himself. He invites you to trust Him in the waiting. Just like a gardener removes branches that look alive, but produce no fruit, God removes connections that limit your spiritual growth. It is not cruelty, it is care. You may not see it yet, but something inside you begins to heal. Without constant emotional noise, your prayers become honest. You stop praying for someone to return and start praying for peace. And slowly, peace answers before understanding does. God often removes people to reveal your dependence on Him alone. When someone leaves, the space they occupied feels painful at first. But that space is where God steps in. He teaches you to stand without leaning too heavily on another human heart. This season reshapes you. You become stronger in quiet ways. You learn discernment. You recognize peace as a sign of alignment with God's will. And though the loneliness still visits, it no longer controls you. God is not taking something from you. He is making room for who you are meant to become. With time, clarity begins to arrive quietly. Not all at once, but in small moments when your heart feels lighter than it used to. You notice you can breathe again. You laugh without forcing it. The pain has not disappeared, but it no longer defines every thought. You start to see what you could not see before. The imbalance. The emotional weight you were carrying alone. The prayers that were answered with silence because God was preparing a different outcome. Sometimes, God removes someone so you can finally hear His voice without interference. There is a subtle healing that happens when you stop resisting God's plan. You no longer beg for what was lost. You begin to ask for wisdom instead. And wisdom changes how you remember the past. You stop blaming yourself for what ended and start thanking God for what did not continue. This is the stage where faith becomes personal. Not something you inherited or learned from others, but something you live. You understand that God is not only present in blessings, but also in endings. He closes doors with the same love He opens them. the removal begins to make sense. Not because the pain was small, but because the growth is real. You are more grounded now, less desperate for approval, more aware of God's presence in ordinary moments. God was not breaking your heart. He was protecting your future and strengthening your faith at the same time. One day, without realizing when it happened, you stopped checking the past for answers. The memories are still there, but they no longer pull you backward. Instead, they sit quietly, like lessons you carry rather than wounds you reopen. You begin to understand that God's timing is not meant to be comfortable, only faithful. If that person had stayed, you might have settled for less than God's best. You might have compromised your values, your peace, or the quiet voice guiding you forward. God removes people not only to protect you from harm, but to align you with purpose. Some relationships distract rather than destroy. They keep you busy but not fulfilled. And God, in His mercy, steps in before distraction becomes damage. In this season, you start trusting God with your future more than your feelings. You learn that peace is a clearer sign of God's will than excitement ever was. What remains calm after the storm is often what was meant to stay. There is strength now in your solitude, not isolation, but sacred space. Space where your faith matures without pressure. Space where God rebuilds your confidence gently. Space where you realize you were never abandoned, only redirected. What felt like loss was actually guidance. God was leading you away so He could lead you forward. Eventually, you stop asking God to explain the past, and you start trusting Him with what comes next. The pain no longer feels sharp. It feels meaningful. You understand now that God did not remove someone to leave you empty, but to fill your life with something deeper than you expected. You realize that not everyone who walks with you is meant to walk with you forever. Some people are part of God's process, not His promise. And when they leave, it does not mean you were unworthy. It means the assignment is complete. Faith grows quietly here. You no longer rush relationships. You listen more closely to peace. You trust God's hand even when it moves people out of your life without warning. Because now you know, God never removes without purpose. If someone was removed from your life, let this truth rest in your heart. God saw what you could not. He protected what mattered most. And He's still guiding you, step by step, into a future shaped by grace, not regret. If this message spoke to you, take a quiet moment today, reflect, pray, and allow God to continue His gentle work in your life. If this story touched your heart, take a quiet moment to sit with it. Let God speak to you in the stillness. And if you feel led, gently support this channel by liking the video, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who may be walking through a similar season. You're not alone, and your journey still matters.